Salut! Today's video is all about definite articles. Definite articles is a pretty sophisticated term. You definitely use definite articles in English all the time. You just don't have to think about it because basically in English there is only one definite article, and that is the word the. It's considered to be a definite article because it refers to a specific or definite item. For example, it's not using the word a, it's the word the. So you don't say a book. A book would be unspecified, indefinite kinds of articles. You say the book, as in not just any old book, but the book referring to a specific book, such as one that you maybe left on the table or something along those lines. So all of the words that we're about to talk about today are just like the English word the, but in French there are actually 4 definite articles or 4 ways of saying the. Kind of along the same lines of how there were 2 ways of saying a or an, there's actually 4 ways of saying the. We have the for a masculine item, which is pronounced le. That le word there is le. It means the for an item that is masculine. So le roman would be the novel. Again, you use le and not one of these other L words because novel happens to be masculine. La is the word the for a feminine item. So I gave you the example from your notes of la radio is the radio. L apostrophe gets used anytime you have a singular noun. Keep in mind it has to be just one item that starts with a vowel. Basically, the reason why you use L apostrophe instead of your basic le or la, based on whether it's masculine or feminine, is because if you do that, like for example with the word for school, school is technically feminine. So by all intents and purposes, you would want to say la école because la is the feminine word for the, and that would be how you would say the school. Except French people kind of take issue with this idea of 2 vowel sounds being right next to each other at the end of one word and the beginning of the next. It's got a lot to do with the pronunciation. It has to do with the idea of when you blend it together, it kind of almost sounds like you're slurring or stuttering. And when you say something like this, like all, it kind of all blends together. And they figure if it's going to blend together, let's blend together, make it sound pretty. So they'll actually get rid of that A and make it L apostrophe. Or same in the difference if you were doing it with le. So instead of la école, because école starts with a vowel, you actually have to use an L apostrophe instead. This also happened with je and that form of avoir, ai. It just became je instead of je ai. It became je with the J apostrophe. And you'll see that a lot this year in French 1. It's just kind of something to get used to, and it's something that happens pronunciation-wise when you're dealing with a word that ends in a vowel sound followed directly by a word that begins with a vowel sound. So again, L apostrophe still means the, but it's used for a singular item that starts with a vowel. Les, the les word, be careful there, a lot of people mispronounce the masculine form. Les is pronounced les, is the word the for plural items such as les frites, which are the fries. Plural again just means that there's more than one, usually means it ends in the letter S, which we talk about here. Keep in mind that there's no way to tell from looking at the word whether it's masculine or feminine. You just have to memorize it as you go along. So as you take notes on words, you'll always write an article in front of it. Now, it might be that you write an or an une for a of that item, whether it's a masculine item and an, or a feminine item and une. It might be that you write le or la, so that you know whether it's the feminine item, the masculine item le, le, or the feminine item la, la. Either way, you can usually tell if an item is plural if it ends in an S. So I was having you fill in a couple of items here as an example. You have le crayon is the pencil because crayon, pencil, happens to be masculine. Again, though, if you add an S to that word crayon and you get pencils, then you need to use the plural form of the, which is les, L-E-S, for the pencils. Again, both words mean the. It's just a matter of which one matches which item. In this case, because crayon is singular and masculine, you use le. Because crayon is plural here, you use les. Radio is feminine, so it's la radio, like we mentioned on the previous page. The one that I wanted to point out here is français. Français is the word French, and it's just spelled with an S at the end. That's its natural spelling. It just happens to end in the letter S, so please don't get confused. It is not a plural word. If you want to say French or talk about liking French class or things like that, it is a masculine word, and you just use le, even though it ends in an S. Again, I want to point out the thing with école as far as it starts with a vowel. So if you want to say the school, you'll say l'école with an L apostrophe. Notice how when it's plural, though, that it is still les. It's still les. Because again, the only time you use L apostrophe is if you have a singular noun, one item, that happens to start with a vowel. The biggest problem here for most of my French 1 students is keeping track of when to use an indefinite article, meaning the words a or an, or technically some, versus a definite article, which is the word the. In English, y'all are really good at knowing when you need to say a or an item versus the item. But in French, because they're such teeny tiny words and they look nothing like the English version, a lot of people have some trouble. So go ahead and fill in the chart now. Where you see the X outs, it means it doesn't really apply for those items. But keep in mind that if you have a masculine item, you can either say an for that item if you want to say a or an for that item, or you could say le for that item if you want to say the. For feminine items, you could either say une with that item, like une chaise for a chair, or you can say la for that item if you want to say the for that item, like la chaise, the chair. If it happens to start with a vowel, there's no specific reason that you need to handle it differently with the indefinite articles, because again, they end in that an and une sound, and the n sound is not a vowel sound. But with these definite articles, you've got that L apostrophe. For plural, again, you've got two different versions here. If you want to say some items, such as some books, des livres. If you want to say the books, though, something very definite and specific, you want to say les livres. And again, we talked about how the word pas can never be followed by an or une or de. So if you find yourself writing a sentence where you feel the need to write pas followed by an or une or de, you actually need to change it to either de or the apostrophe. No such problem exists with definite articles. You can have pas le, pas la, pas L apostrophe, and we're good to go, and it's not a problem. So the last thing I want to point out is a couple of examples. Notice the differences between the following sentences. Basically, all I've changed is the article, but if you change it from j'ai un baladeur right here versus j'ai le baladeur down here, you have the difference between saying I have an MP3 player, as in any old MP3 player, just one that I happen to have found, versus I have the MP3 player, as in the MP3 player that you were asking me about that's pink with purple rhinestones, or whatever the situation might be. Same kind of thing happens over here on the right-hand side of your page. Il a des magazines is he has some magazines. Any old magazines will do. He's got some. Il a les magazines, though, means he has the magazines, as in the magazines that you were asking him to bring over to your house because you really think they're great. So just like how in English, depending on what your situation is, you might need the word a or an, or the word the. In French, depending on your situation, you might need the word an or une, or the words le, la, or les. So be very careful with that, and be sure to bring me any questions that you have to next class.